Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today, patch 7.3 is finally upon us, so it's time to travel to Argus and defeat the Legion, but most importantly of all, we're really there to get gear with higher numbers than what we currently have so that we can output more numbers and get gear with even more numbers. Patch 7.3 also replaces many of the 7.2 gearing systems, so the main purpose of today's video is really twofold. First, we're going to cover the new methods, and second, I'm going to give you my recommendations for the best way to gear up a character in terms of the amount of time you're actually putting in. So let's kick the video off with World Quests. World Quests are going to drop significantly better gear in this patch, but do bear in mind that World Quest gear actually increases in item level based on your character's item level. I mean, like the base item level of gear when it drops. This means that I recommend that you do World Quests after you've got a high enough initial item level that the gear rewards from the World Quests are going to be scaled up a little bit, but more on that later on. We see the gear capping out at 890 for the PvP World Quests, 880 to 885 for the Broken Isles World Quests, and then around 895 for the Argus World Quests. There are also new 7.3 factions which have been added to the Emissary Cache system, and so have the Armies of Legionfall as well, so that's pretty much all working as you would expect with the current World Quest system broadly. Next, we have Dungeon and Raid item level changes. So dungeons have been updated. They are a little bit more difficult to compensate for all the new gear that we're going to get, but of course their rewards have been increased by 20 across the board. This means that Normal now drops 845, Heroic drops 865, and Mythic drops 885. Mythic plus Loot is, as shown on this graph, pretty much following a similar pattern to patch 7.2. Note that it caps out at plus 10 initially. We can expect to see this increase to plus 15 later on when the new raid comes out. Do also bear in mind that we have the effects of the alterations to the Mythic plus gear system that came in 7.2, where you gain a 20% chance to get an extra bit of loot for every level of keystone you go above the cap, maxing out at 100%. Next, we have Veiled Argonite. It is actually really important as a resource in patch 7.3. It essentially fills a very similar role to that of the Nether Shards, but it is acquired through different means. Veiled Argonite will be used to purchase item level 910 gear tokens, including tokens for specific relic types, which is quite the improvement over the previous patch. Getting Veiled Argonite is simple enough. First, it will drop from some Argus World Quests, so it's totally worth doing those. They are also found in treasure chests around Argus, as well as the corpses of Argus rare mobs. Then regular invasion points, another very dependable resource or way to get Veiled Argonite, so do those as they spawn in ideally. There are almost always a few invasion points up, they basically seem to spawn in like World Quests, and I would recommend using the pre-made group finder to get a whole bunch of people in there for the sake of speed. I believe as of Blizzard's most recent blog post, they're good for 3 to 10 people. Past that, you will find a number of weekly quests as the patch content unlocks. These generally give you a good few hundred, so goal number 1, I'd say every week in this patch, is to complete all of your weekly quests. Next up, we have crafted gear. There are 2 tiers of relevant crafted gear in patch 7.3. So the crafted gear that exists today will continue to be relevant in the upcoming patch, with its item level cap staying at 900. And of course, just as they are now, these are upgraded with normal Obliterum. Now, each armor type is going to get an additional bit of crafted gear from Argus that can be upgraded to item level 935 using Primal Obliterum, which basically you get Primal Obliterum with 1 regular Obliterum and 1 Primal Sargarite at the Obliterum Forge. We then have Bind on Account Unsullied tokens, so these drop from mobs and chests, rare mobs, in Argus and some weeklies. These are kind of similar to the timeless tokens of patch 5.4 in that they are bind on account, which means that you can post them to your alts on other servers. So basically, you will collect these over time on your main, and you'll be able to send them to alts to get them quickly up to speed. Okay, invasion points. So I did cover lesser invasion points as a way of getting Veiled Argonite, but the greater invasion points are essentially things that fill the same niche as world bosses and what they did in previous Legion patches. These are going to be unlocked by doing a quest from Illidan, which is to get 15 Waystones. That will involve doing about 4 regular invasion points. Now, the bosses inside the greater invasion points drop base item level gear of 935, which is tremendously strong in the pre-Antorus period that these are coming out with, as you know, of course, they're actually competing with Tomb of Sargeras gear. Next, legendary. So there is a new legendary ring from defeating the final boss of the new raid, but that's something you won't be able to do until patch 7.3.5 releases, probably in 77 days after this patch releases. Now when it does release, you're also going to be able to upgrade existing legendaries to item level 1000 through a quest that is pretty much similar to the 970 upgrade that we have currently. And also, I just want to cover some quick tips that aren't necessarily 7.3 stuff. First, the weekly Brawl quest. I think you should do that. It gives you a chest that potentially has some high item level gear, and it only requires you to win one Brawl, which can be super quick and handy. Then, I think, of course, do the dungeon event and time walking, and the time walking meta event. Do those. They drop guaranteed current day raid gear. Now, the 7.3 raid gear, or raid, doesn't come out for months, but this stuff will still be giving you very good Tomb of Sargeras gear. Next, just overall guidance on what I think you should do. Honestly, a lot of it's similar to the general idea for most of Legion gearing, but we have a few new tools this time. But anyway, the general idea with gearing is that as soon as your character hits level 110, you want to increase your average item level as quickly as is possible. Why? Well, world quests scale to your character's average item level, even the world quests that are currently active. So you could be level, say, 110, and, just when you've dinged, the world quests are dropping 805s, and then a few hours later, those very same world quests would be dropping 870 plus. Now, this is particularly important because world quest gear is extremely dependable. You can look at the world quests and know exactly what bit of gear you're going to get, which can be quite good when compared to some initially sort of quite random sources. Personally, I choose to increase the item level of my character super quickly by buying a set of 850 crafted gear from the auction house. These, they're often a tiny amount of gold and it saves you a lot of time, so that's normally what I do. I then look for bind on equipped gear in the auction house. Some of it can be very cheap, some of it can be a bit more expensive though, so it depends on your budget. Past that, I recommend getting to Argus as quickly as you can so you can begin getting Veiled Argonite and of course unlock the various Argus world quests, which will drop higher item level gear than the Broken Isles ones. Now do be sure to do all of the side quests on Argus because they will unlock new world quest areas. Now while it is from the previous patch, you'll probably still do want to do the patch 7.2 world boss if the Nether Disruptor is up, and then also do enough progress on Argus to get access to greater Legion invasion points, as the bosses inside there will drop 935 gear, essentially filling the same niche as all of the other world bosses. Now, they are nerfing Legion Fall Hand-In significantly, so uptime on the Nether Disruptor and stuff will be lower than it used to be, unless Blizzard lowers the requirement for it to be active, but we're not really sure. Now, the 7.2 content does exist, even though 7.3 is going to be the current patch. If a Legion invasion pops up, you can do one of those for a quick 2.5k Nether Shards, which would get you 6 Dauntless tokens for 850 gear. That would be a quick way to boost yourself up, fill in some gaps in your gear set. I guess you can do that because there's no equivalent of Dauntless tokens and that you can buy off a vendor super readily in 7.3. But really, that's a backup. I would just get the cheap crafted gear. Now, the ideal thing to do is probably just to blast through Mythic or Mythic Plus dungeons with a bunch of friends, as that gear is now super high item level, but that really isn't feasible for many players who are early on in the gearing process, especially if you want to DPS, so you may want to do a few other things first. Now, after getting some of that quick boost gear, like the crafted stuff that I talked about, that's normally when I will start to do world quests, as they will be quite close to their item level cap. Though, if it is a dungeon week, I would recommend doing the Dungeon Week meta quest and just doing the dungeons in general, because the end boss they're guaranteed to drop some loot. Then, of course, I would also do Tomb of Sargeras LFR as soon as you can get the requirement to actually get in there. Now, once you've done all that, you should be close enough to capping out the world quest rewards, so that's pretty much when you want to do your world quests. They should be like 870 plus, 880 plus at this stage, and that'll just get you a great set of starter gear. So by this stage, your character should be decently established. You will have done Tomb of Sargeras LFR, the 7.2 world boss if it was up. You'll have cleared out your world quests. Hopefully you will have done the new invasion point, the greater invasion point boss, so it's probably time to try to push your weekly keystone in a mythic dungeon as high as you can. Now, this is going to be a relatively fantastic source of gear in this patch. The Tomb of Sargeras raid still drops gear out at 7.2 item levels, of course, but Mythic Plus was then buffed up 20 item levels higher, so it is a really great way to get some initial gear. Though, of course, that's not a free 20 item levels. They are, balanced to be harder now. And I also recommend you pay attention to your champion missions. The more that you do those, you want to unlock the new raid missions. That will more kick in when 7.2.5 comes out, but in general, if you can get the Tomb of Sargara's guaranteed loot raid missions from your Order Hall champion board, then of course that's just more dependable gear on an every 7 to 10 day basis. And really that's pretty much it. This just comes down to gaming how the World Quest reward scaling works to get a very fast, initially sort of strong set of gear that will basically get you into Mythic Plus and into raids nice and quick. Of course, there's lots of other ways to do this. You can just pump out heroic dungeons rate 65, do as many regular mythics as you can. That's also a great way to get gear, but generally you just want to be getting into Mythic Plus nice and fast, and then of course just the Argus content. Do the Argus content. Overall goal number 1 should probably be getting Veiled Argonite, because that's going to allow you to very specifically fill in your gear with really good 9-10 plus stuff, and then of course the same for your relics, which is a new thing over 7.2 that is an absolute godsend. Often what happens is you get loads of really decent gear, but you're left with that one relic slot in your artifact that's absolutely trash. That's no longer going to be a problem in 7.3. Okay, that's pretty much what I recommend for how to gear up a character in this patch. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.